David had just recently moved into a new house that he had been saving up for a long time. The neighborhood was quiet, well-maintained, and there were small, comfortable houses just like his own. After unpacking his belongings, David decided to take a short walk and get to know his neighbors. In the cabin to his right lived an old man, who usually went out during the day to water the flowers in his garden or to rest on the bench. As he stood talking to this man, he noticed one strange thing. When the guy came out of the house across the street, all the neighbors literally shunned him and no one dared to get close to him. David decided to ask the old man about it, but he was already going home, and he did it in a hurry. Still, the guy asked why everyone was avoiding that man. The man going home said this guy was a psychopath and that everyone who communicated with him disappeared without a trace. And he also advised David to get off the street before it was too late. Turning around, David noticed that the guy was looking at him, but he didn't feel any fear or desire to run away. The guy looked quite normal and didn't look like some kind of madman. Still, David, in spite of the old man's suggestions, decided to go over and meet his neighbor. The guy was standing and going through the mail in his hands when he approached him. David introduced himself and explained that he had recently moved in and was now getting to know his neighbors. The guy smiled in response and held out his hand and introduced himself as Kevin. They sat down on a bench near his house and started talking. Kevin told him about his life here, about wife, the baby, his favorite dog, and which store the prices were cheaper. David liked Kevin a lot and began to wonder why everyone disliked him so much, but he dared not ask why, so as not to offend his new friend. During the week he went to Kevin's house and they sat on his bench and chatted. Kevin often took something tasty outside to give to his friend. And all the while, the neighbors looked at David like he was crazy and began to shun him, too. Once again, deciding that they had gotten close enough, he asked Kevin why the neighbors were so afraid of him. The guy smiled and said it happened a long time ago, when he first moved here with his family. He had become friends here with a man who lived a couple of houses down from him. They used to go and visit each other. Kevin introduced him to his wife and son, and all was well until he found out that his wife was cheating on him with his best friend. David was just shocked when he found out that Kevin had forgiven them their weaknesses and didn't want to ruin his family and friendship. David felt sorry for his stupidity and naivety, but decided he wouldn't hurt the guy. Kevin continued the story, he said after that, when all the neighbors found out what had happened. His wife stopped going out because she was afraid that everyone would start pointing fingers at her. And his friend moved away, but not far away. They still see him very often. This all happened very quickly and the neighbors thought he got rid of them and now goes around talking about his wife and friend as if nothing had happened. When David asked why the baby and the dog aren't walking, Kevin said his wife only lets his son walk in the backyard, so there's no gossip that it might not be my baby. And the dog is very loyal and always likes to be near his owner, so he walks in the backyard, too. His wife often scolds Kevin for not agreeing to move out and they live like recluse. The guy decided to invite David over tomorrow, since he was the only one who dared to talk to him out of all the locals and visitors. He told him that if he came to their house for tea, maybe his wife would stop being afraid to go out and everything would come back to normal. After all David had heard, he didn't want to meet this woman, she disgusted him. But he agreed nonetheless, as he felt sorry for the guy. The next day he bought a cake and went to visit him. When he knocked he realized that the door was not closed and went inside. It was dark inside and the only light coming in was from the windows. He smelled fresh baked goods, but with it a faint odor of mustiness. He decided to walk on and look for someone, since no one answered him when he called out to his neighbors. As he walked down the hallway, he peered through the open doors. He saw a very well-kept nursery. It was a little dusty, but he could see that the bed was made every day. A little farther into another room he saw a bedroom that looked neat and cozy. At the end of the hallway he saw a small doorway. As he approached it, the smell of baking intensified. He decided it was the kitchen. As he entered the kitchen, he saw 3 people at the table with their faces down. A woman, a child, and some man. He assumed it was the same best friend who had betrayed him. As he got closer, he touched the woman's shoulder to say hello, but he accidentally moved his hand back and the woman threw her head back. David froze in horror. The woman was dead. Pieces of skin on her face were stitched and her entire face and neck were smeared with something, as if they had tried to embalm her, but unsuccessfully. Pulling back the others, he saw the same thing. As he backed up, he saw a dead dog under the table, its face in a bowl full of food. David decided that while there was still time, he had to run out of the house and call the police, but from behind him he heard Kevin's voice. "Have you met my family yet?" He felt something cold and sharp against his neck. He realized it was a knife, but then he heard the last words of his life. "Now you are my new friend and you will stay here."